Hi, this is Darren, and this is AutoAtlantica. Now, this is part two of my tour around my car collection here. I'm introducing you to the car and discussing basically what the repairs were in 2023 and a little bit before that, but mainly 2023, and what I'm going to be doing to these cars in 2024 as well, and any other future plans. So the final three cars in this barn are my 1990 Merkur Scorpio. Now, I've had this car. I bought it from a Ford collector. It's a good friend of mine in central Pennsylvania. These cars are exceptionally rare. I will do a video on the Merkur story, but in short, about 22,000 of these were imported. This was Bob Lutz's little project to try and compete with BMW and Mercedes in this country, but I'm not going to go into that now. The only issues I've had with this car, the heated rear window switch decided to go up in smoke, quite literally, which is a common problem on these, and I do have a new switch. Also, a few months ago, the coolant was running very high and not settling back down in the reservoir very much. It's just sort of remained high. I drained some of it and it's been fine since, but I also replaced the reservoir cap as well, and I think that solved it. But it's something just to keep an eye on. And the rest of the car is good. It's had an oil change in 2022, and it's been running fine. So no issues really with the Merkur Scorpio. So the spend on it has been very, very small. My 1986 Peugeot 505 Turbo. I bought this 2 years ago. Where shall I start? It's a work in progress, is this one. It runs actually fine. All I've done this last year is just put a tank of new petrol in it, really, and I've also replaced the battery. I replaced the battery because it was having a problem starting, and I noticed when I bought the new battery, it runs out of the car at 880 ccas, cold cranking amps, but as soon as I hook it up, it falls to about 150, which suggests that there's a ground problem. Now, I had a hell of a time trying to start the car, and then I topped it up with a bit of fresh fuel. This was a few weeks ago, and then it's just started fine. So I'm not sure if it's just the fuel, because I did put stable in it, so I'm not sure if there's a problem with the fuel or if it is indeed just the cold cranking amps that are causing the problem. The cost of the battery was about $180, and that's pretty much the only spend that it has had. It will need an oil change as well in the spring. That's going to be looked at. They are also going to put new brakes on all round in this car because it does need that. The brakes are shocking. So that's the Peugeot. Okay, one of the big ticket items in terms of spend was on this car in 2023. This is my 1990 Pontiac Le Mans. Those of you in Europe will recognize this as the Opel Kadett or Vauxhall Astra E. Interesting car, very few of these left. These were really beta cars over here. I found this one under a tree about 3 years ago, and I decided to buy it. I paid the princely sum of $600 for it. Excuse me. I initially spent $700 having a new battery, new tyres put on all round, and it had a new fuel pump put on it. That fuel pump crapped out really quickly, couldn't get it started. So last spring, it went to a GM dealership to have a whole bunch of work done on this car. And what we've done is replace the entire fuel system. So it's had new fuel lines, it's had new fuel pump, it's had new fuel filters, it's got a new fuel sender in the tank as well. The tank was cleaned out, and we've got new injectors in there as well. On the ignition side, we've got a new distributor, we've got new plugs, and we've got new plug leads, HT leads. And then on the brake side, it's got new brakes, front and rear. I've got some nice Brembo discs on the front, and we've got new drums on the rear. It's also had new fabricated brake lines throughout as well. We've had new power steering lines put on as well because they were leaking. So it's had, mechanically, it's practically tip top. It will need a new pulley on the timing belt at some point, because that's making a noise. And then I can crack on with the interior. I've made a start on it, but there's a fair bit of work to do on the interior. Notably, the old liner on the roof is sagging badly. That needs to be sorted out, and we're going to have a new custom one put in. And then there's just some, as you can see here, there's a few rust patches here and there. The worst is at the bottom of the front wings, both sides. That will probably need to have a new plate put in. So there's still some work to be done. Total spend in 2023, initially $700 a couple of years ago. Total spend this year, $2,600. These are my two Vespa GTV 250 scooters. These are the touring scooters. They're on the larger Vespa frame. And both of these are 2009 models. They're both got fuel injected. They've both got ABS on them as well. They've been sitting for a little while now. So one of my plans over the winter is to basically change the oil on these things and check the coolant. The coolant was good when I last looked at them. The batteries are both dead. Despite being on tenders, they have died a death. So I need to get batteries in both of these bikes. Right, so I'm now up at my garage, and the first car that I'm going to show you, these really are sort of pushed in here. It's very much car Tetris territory. This is my 2003 Jaguar S-Type R. You'll have to excuse all the rubbish that's in here with them. It's a little bit dusty. This garage gets very dusty indeed. So this 2003 S-Type R, I've had this car now for about 7 years. The first thing that was done to it before I bought it, it's had a complete new cooling system on this car. It used to overheat a lot. It's been fine ever since. A couple of years ago, I would say probably 2 years ago now, I had new valve cover gaskets put on this car because it was leaking oil. I mean, again, it's had new brake booster lines on this car as well. The valley pipe that goes under the supercharger was checked, and that is fine. And that was pretty much about it in terms of the work that I've had done to this car. That was about, if I remember rightly, $1,300 to have that work done. The spend last year was zero. Didn't go out in this car. Like I say, it was just a dreadful driving year. Weather-wise, the driving season was terrible. And so I am hoping for a better one this year. This is one of 3 cars that I have, 2 of which are formerly part of the collection, that I've bought brand new. This is a 2013 Fiat 500 Abarth. I wanted to add one of these, knowing that Fiat probably wouldn't be around too long in the US, and Abarth certainly wouldn't. And indeed, Abarth has moved on out of the United States as of 2018. These cars were built by Chrysler in Mexico. They're not that well built, and a lot of them went into the hands of youngsters, and they had appalling modifications done, and they've just ended up on scrap yards. So there's not many good ones left. This one's only done 1,400 miles from new. I've deliberately kept it low miles. It basically goes for quick spins up and down the local roads. It's great for bombing around with, and there's nothing wrong with it. The last oil change was done fairly recently. This brings me on to the issue that I had. In August, I started having problems starting it, and I thought it was the clutch safety switch, because I would go through it. It sounded very weak trying to start it. And after several attempts, I put my foot on the clutch and the brake, and it would just fire into life. It was very random. I took it in to my local Fiat dealer, and it transpired that it was a long-standing issue with the powertrain control module that needed a software update. So that 5-minute plug-in software update, which I have found since online, cost me the princely sum of $250, plus another $100 for the oil change. That was its spend in 2023, $350. So yeah, I was a bit annoyed about that, but that's all it was. It's been fine since, absolutely fine. Let's get back here and discuss these two. This is the newest car that I have. This is a 2022 Chevrolet Camaro LT1. This has got the fire-breathing LT1 engine. It's a 6.2 litre V8. It produces 455 horsepower and a similar amount in torque. So it is by far and away the most powerful car that I've got in the collection, more powerful than the S-Type R, which is 400 horsepower, and more powerful than my truck, which is 395. Yeah, it's brand new. It needs for nothing. It had an oil change, its first oil change at the beginning of 2023. And it's got, once the weather breaks and we're into spring, I have quite a few GM accessories that I am going to have fitted up. Bought the smoke tail lights, for instance. It's going to have the black band across the back between the tail lights, which will really give it a menacing look. And I've also got the illuminated door sill plates as well that it's going to have fitted. The oil change, incidentally, was free. So that was the 2023 spend. Right. 1995 Volvo 740 Turbo. This one has had a fair bit of work done to it over the years. A new turbo return line, because that was leaking. New suspension struts and towers. The wiper transmission was replaced. I've had new headlight wipers on it as well. It's had a new alternator and various other bits and bobs as well. It's running fine. This is the only one I can't get started in the winter because I have to get the other cars out to get to it. And this is the one car where when you start it up after it's not been started in a while, you can hear those lifters. So I basically just leave it ticking along until it's warmed up. I'll let it run for about half an hour before I take it out anywhere. Last winter, it had dropped some coolant, and I did wonder if the bottom coolant hose was leaking. I did run this several times over the summer and into the autumn, and I've had no such repetition of that issue. So it will need an oil change in 2024. I'm going to take it up to Drennan, which is a big independent Volvo specialist about 50 miles from here. I'm going to take it there so they can go over it with a fine tooth comb, and we can just basically give it a health check and just see what issues it has. This car has only covered 120,000 miles from new, and it just runs like a top. It's beautiful.